Thank you. Welcome, everybody. I'm Sophia Bogle, president of the Friends of Hannon Library at Southern Oregon University. We are the ones who put this speaker series together every year, and we also work to raise funds to enrich the Hannon Library's offerings, from adding rare books to the Marjorie Bailey Special Shakespeare collection to adding special databases that enhance student research. If you too believe in the awesome power of libraries to make the world a better place, please join us and become a member of the Friends of Hannon Library. You also get access to be able to check out items from the Hannon Library, of course. I will post a link after my little spiel here in the Q&A to the Hannon Library friends. After our speaker this evening, I want you all to know that we're holding our annual Friends of Hannon Library membership meeting. And I hope that some of you will stay to help vote in our new slate of board officers and to celebrate our accomplishments this year. Before I turn this over to our speaker tonight, I'm going to go over some technical items. This event is being recorded, as you may have noticed. Because this is a Zoom webinar rather than regular Zoom, you will not be able to see yourself, and you will be muted during the presentation, all you audience members. We have the chat feature disabled, but the Q&A feature is available, and I will read your questions for our speaker at the end, but you can post them anytime. If you are having technical difficulties, you can email the tech help link found in your registration email. Many thanks to Erica Knotts for running this webinar from behind the scenes. And now it's our tradition at Southern Oregon University to take a moment to acknowledge our connection to this land, its history, and its present. The following is a formal land acknowledgement written by the members of the Native American Studies program here at SOU. We want to take this moment to acknowledge that Southern Oregon University is located within the ancestral homelands of the Shasta, Takelma, and Latgawa peoples who lived here since time immemorial. These tribes were displaced during rapid Euro-American colonization, the gold rush, and armed conflict between 1851 and 1856. In the 1850s, discovery of gold and settlement brought thousands of Euro-Americans to their lands, leading to warfare, epidemics, starvation, and villages being burned. In 1853, the first of several treaties were signed, confederating these tribes and others together, who would then be referred to as the Rogue River Tribe. These treaties ceded most of their homelands to the United States, and in return, they were guaranteed a permanent homeland reserved for them. At the end of the Rogue River Wars in 1856, these tribes and many other tribes from Western Oregon were removed to the Siletz Reservation and the Grand Ronde Reservation. Today, the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde Community of Oregon and the Confederated Tribes of Siletz Indians are living descendants of the Takelma, Shasta, and Latgawa peoples of this area. We encourage you to learn about the land you reside on and to join us in advocating for the inherent sovereignty of Indigenous people. Okay, and tonight's event is the 7th of our 7-part speaker series with Gigi Best, who will be speaking on her book, Thomas the Melungeon, Walking in My Ancestor's Footsteps. Gigi is a historian and scholar, as well as the co-owner and curator of the Best Richardson African Diaspora Literature and Culture nonprofit museum in St. Augustine, Florida. That is the longest title I've ever known. Anyway, she is a member of many national hereditary societies, such as the Order of First Families of North Carolina and Daughters of the American Revolution. She is also Historian General of the Society of the First African Families of English America. And I will put up some links to her museum and to her book in the chat in just a minute, or the Q&A or whatever. Anyway, that's all good. And without further ado, here is Gigi Best.
Hello, it's awesome to be here and to think about the fact that I'm mentally in Oregon and I'm on the other side of the world right now. I am in St. Augustine, Florida. So I've been a genealogist really seriously since 2007. And I teach genealogy classes at the museum. And I've done extensive work on my family, taking them back to colonial times, both my Euro-American family, I like that term, and my families of African descent and Native American descent. So I want to start my presentation, and it's Thomas the Melungeon. The title of the book is different. You'll see that, but this is the name of my presentation, Walking in My Ancestors' Footsteps. So I'm gonna start the PowerPoint slide. Okay, on this first slide, what you'll see is Fort Macon. And you see the footsteps going there. I actually
I'm not
visited.
seeing your slides, Gigi. Can you
You're
stop
not
for a
seeing
minute?
them?
No,
Okay, hold on a minute.
I know it just worked a second ago. It's just one of those
Yeah,
things.
hold on. Let me see what's going on.
It's happened to me earlier today. So
Okay. Maybe I have to hit I'm gonna put from the beginning, and I probably have to hit share again.
yeah,
Let me see.
share screen and then,
Yeah, share screen, then the slide.
yeah.
Okay. So I'm gonna do share and PowerPoint presentation. It's too large to be sent. No, it's trying to do an email. Wait a minute.
Are you, Gigi, are you on the Zoom screen hitting the green share button, or are
No.
you on the PowerPoint?
I think I was on the PowerPoint. Let me go back to the Zoom where it says more and share screen. Trying to open up the PowerPoint again, because I closed it down in order to do this. So
It's just one of those days. We're
yes,
yes,
yes, it
don't worry
is.
about it. I had
Okay.
this earlier. You're having it. It's yeah.
Okay. So now I'm going to do share. Raise hand, share screen. Okay, here it is.
That
Now,
seems to
can
be
you see
working.
it?
Perfect.
Yep.
Okay. There we are. So now I have to start the slide from the beginning. Okay. Now, what is happening now too, I'm seeing all of you like in part of where the slide should be. Should I change my view or?
You're perfect from my thing. I can see you and I can see your slide, and that's all I can see.
Okay.
That's perfect.
Okay, so this is Fort Macon, and this is where my second great grandfather, who was a free man of color, and he enlisted in the Union Army on his 18th birthday. So he went in as soon as he could go in. And you see here, this is Waynoke Parish that my ancestors go all the way back to Charles City County, Virginia. On the left-hand side, you'll see this on two screens. That is the actual copy of the court record from my ninth great grandmother and ninth great grandfather. So this presentation is on the lineage and discovery of my ancestors and the descendants from the colonial Melungeons. And the Melungeons are free people of color. And a lot of times people do not see a lot of these records in America, but there are in different colonial books, records in the National Archives and Virginia Archives. The Spanish document 16 cases of the English raiding slavers bound for Spanish America in the 1630s. So these hijackings were redirected. They redirected about 2,400 Africans, mostly Angolans, to English colonies, since they were given carte blanche to attack any Spanish or Portuguese ship. So a lot of people don't know about the privateers, but they were basically English pirates. And they attacked these ships because they thought they were going to get gold, ivory, different valuables like that, but instead they got valuable human beings from Africa. This slide is showing on the side again those same different, the Waynoke Parish. That's actually a highway sign. And the Lucas Locust, his name is Thomas Locust Fuller. So the Lucas Locust tan family originated in Angola and England. So my 9th great grandmother, my grandparents resided in Charles City County. And so I have that court record who talks about the discovery of this child and the indentureship. So Elizabeth Lucy, or Lucas, and you'll find out that when you do this kind of work, a lot of things are spelled incorrectly. So one of the things you'll see is the Lucas name can be spelled L-U-C-O-S, L-U-C-A-S, L-O-C-U-S-T. And when you start seeing L-O-C-U-S-T, that's when you start seeing the Native American locust. So when Elizabeth, and I've been able to trace her family back, she was a servant maid at the time. So just like nowadays, people who work together ended up, you know, having relationships, having children, sometimes by virtue of marriage, sometimes not. So Elizabeth was presented to the church wardens of Waynoke Parish for having an illegitimate child. And she was threatened to receive 30 lashes for having this child. But a gentleman paid 500 pounds of tobacco to the church to spare her. During the time, it was more church related than it was court related, because the church basically ran everything. You could be fined for not going to church. Records were kept. You see these pictures of people in the stocks. They could be put in the stocks for not going to church. So this was in this record that you can't read because of the very difficult English writing. So it said her son, a mulatto boy, the son of Elizabeth Lucy, deceased, was bound to Harold Price on 4 December 1665. His father was proven to be John, and they called him Jack Kekatan. He was listed as a Negro servant, and I'm using the words when I'm doing this that were used at that time in those records. So it says a Negro servant to Mr. Rice Ho I. John Kekatan was in colonial America and indentured to Ho by 1635. So the court ordered him to be set free on 8 February 1665. And you'll see all of these records in the court records, 601, 604, 605. I received copies of all of this to verify. So Jack was ordered free from his service by virtue of a note given to him by Rice Ho after 29 years of indentureship. That's tantamount to enslavement. I'm trying to advance it. Okay, what you see here is a pedigree chart. Any of you that work with genealogy have seen these before, and maybe you have your own, but Thomas, you see him up here in the upper left-hand corner. He was born in 1847, and he married his first wife in 1870, and he passed away in 1932. He did receive a pension, but it was after a long time of fighting a battle, because back then they said that the only way you could get a pension was through disability. So each time he had to prove his disability to be considered. And my husband's retired military, so it looks the same as when men currently are trying to get their disability. So Thomas's mother was Caroline, and Caroline's father is Isham, and then his mother's Jane, and we go to Francis. So wherever you end up, that's where you start again. So here's Francis, and John Jack Lucas was born in 1710, and the baby that we were hearing about was born in 4 December 1665. And then it goes back probably to Angola. Another thing you'll see here, Isham married Margaret Roberts. When we go back to Francis, who is directly descendant to Thomas, you'll see that Francis, he was in the Revolutionary War, and Isham's wife, Margaret Roberts, her father was Ishmael. He served in a Revolutionary War. His father, Kinchin, served in a Revolutionary War, and so did Margaret's mother was Cherokee, and her father served in a Revolutionary War. So you see, I have a long line of patriots here. On this particular screen, you see the Charles City County court records. And if you look down here on your left-hand side, you see on page 52, 652, the abstract, one mulatto boy, the son of Elizabeth Lucy, deceased, to remain with Howell Price until he's 30 years of age. So in Virginia, it was usually 30 years, whether you were male or female and were indentured. You also see right here in the middle is Francis, and also you see Thomas. They were locusts who were in the Revolutionary War, and this is Ishmael Roberts' actual narrow record. You see that these free people of color were indentured very early, sometimes in life. This is a record from the Nash County Court, and that's where Isham was born. It says, "'Tis ordered by the court that the clerk issue citations to all the several masters or mistresses in this county to whom base-born children of color are bound to appear at the next court and produce such person as an apprentice before them, and also to enter into bond with sufficient security in the sum of 250 pounds And they're saying that they will not remove those apprentices out of that county. So when I was reading this and I'm looking at their ages, so this court record 278 says ordered that Isham Locust, and you'll see that's another way they spelled it, Martha and Burwell, 3 base begotten children, be bound to Lazarus Pope as follows. Isham is only 3, Martha's only 4, and Burwell is only 2 months. But you knew they must have had some status because they were going to teach the men the mystery of planters and the girl spinning and carding. So this shows you definite proof in genealogy who their parents are when you see this. Now, because they're called base begotten children, that means at the time that Jane has Burwell and these other 2 children, she's not legally married. And this is a descendant chart, just a partial one from Isham. So on Ancestry.com, for any of you that have used the program, there's a program called Through Lines. And if people, it looks at your DNA and it looks at other trees that might be built. And some of them are complete and some of them are not complete. But this shows that Caroline was Isham's daughter. And after a lot of research, I found out that Richard was her brother. And then Thomas was another brother. I think they had like 9 children, but everybody, of course, doesn't do their DNA. But I've worked with the cousins that are descendant from Richard and the ones that are descendant from Thomas. So I know, in fact, this is correct. Now, when you're doing this research, especially military records are just awesome because they give you so much information. Now, here is Isham's narrow record, say he was a private and he was in the Virginia militia. He was in the War of 1812. And so Isham, but his father-in-law was in the Revolutionary War. So a lot of people don't realize how many people of African descent fought in the War of 1812. Some of them know about the revolutionary presence, but they don't all know about 1812. Now, one thing you'll see about these people that were called free people of color, they are descendant of Anglo-Americans, Native, and of African descent. So a lot of times they did not want to give them credit for being Native American. But if you see right here, Isham, when he tried to get his bounty land warrant, he was not able to get it. And he put on there that his nationality was Indian. Somebody put false. He didn't do that. He said what he was. So then you also find out that his warrant was rejected. And I think that's because he only spent 5 days in. If you look when he went in, it said 5 days on the records, but this says from March 19th to March 29th. And it says 5 days, but that looks more like 10 to me, but I don't know how they count the days. These are some other documents that I was able to retrieve from my ancestors. So Thomas, here's his narrow record, and he was in L Company, 4th Heavy Artillery, and he was stationed at Fort Macon that you see in the beginning of the slide. It said that he went through Morehead City, and they have where he was born, Mosley Hall, Lenore, and he was 18. He was a laborer, and he went in April 21st, 1865. So he went in the latter part of the war. I don't think he, from what I've read about that particular unit, it doesn't appear that they saw any action, but he was there. This middle document, there's a organization in DC, and it's called the National African American Civil War Museum. And they have a wall there, and his name is on that wall. So I got this document. They gave it to me when I went to visit. I did a book signing there and spoke a little bit, you know, with other descendants. So when I saw this, and this picture does not do it justice, it's all like in gold foil. And when I asked them, how much do I owe for this particular document, I was told, you don't know anything, because he did that service. So I was very touched by that. And then this is Cherokee Heads of Families in North Carolina. And this was something, you know, the more you look at different documents, you find things that you didn't see before. So up here, this gentleman, Thomas Bigmeat, had 3 people in his family. Now, when I noticed that, my grandmother's nickname was Big Meat, and her sister's nickname was Little Meat. So they knew about their Native American ancestry. This is another document. If you see Isham Lucas, at this time, he's 77 years old. And this is a document where he and Margaret applied for their bond. They had to pay, or promised to pay, $500 if they didn't get married. But this was the bond, and the gentleman, the other person who signed this with him, Elthered Newsom, was his father's, his wife's father's best friend, and he was also in the Revolutionary War. One of the things, there were a lot of, I guess, there were some advantages to being a free person of color, but there were some disadvantages. And this particular article was in October 6, 1801. It was in the Raleigh Register. So this is a cousin, his name is Valentine Locust. And if you see here, they said an aged free Negro who resides in Lick Creek in Wake County, that's Raleigh now, and calling to the door. These people wanted admittance, and as soon as the door was open, they start beating Valentine and his wife with clubs, and stole their 2 younger children. And they said, please help. They expect that they're trying to take these free children down south and sell them. And probably the reason why they took these children, because the children didn't have the free documents that the adults have. But anybody who knows the story of 12 Years a Slave, he had papers, and they tore his papers up. So here, Ishmael Roberts, he was head of a household of 10 other free in 1790. That's a census record. 15 in 1814, he had moved to Chatham County. He received pay for his Revolutionary War, and he obtained 640 acres of land. So his Colonel Shepard, gave him a certificate that says he was furloughed at Valley Forge. So he was actually a free man of color at Valley Forge. And so my other great grandfather that I mentioned to you, Francis Locust, was charged by Thomas and William Taborn with 53 pounds of damages for trespass. He charged them. His wife was one of the Jeffries family, and he and his wife, Hannah, they lost the right to 190 acres of land. So many of them had a lot of land that was given to them, or they earned it through their revolutionary service. And then they sold, and Ishmael sold and bought. He was a regular real estate mogul. One of the things that happened is some of the Roberts left North Carolina, and when you entered another place, you had to prove in Ohio and Indiana that you were actually free. So this is the freedom paper for Pardon Boyne Roberts. And he had, to get Anglo-Americans to verify that he was actually free and a good person in order for him. And you see, it might be hard to see, but it says that his mother is Sylvia Roberts, widow, and that was Sylvia Archer before marriage. And another one of Ishmael's sons was Elias. So when Ishmael had all this land and he was doing this buying and selling, he gave his sons money to move out to Indiana. And many of them went with the Quakers so that they could be protected. And this is a fifth cousin. Her name is Mary Jane Roberts, and she's the daughter of Wade and Mary Jane. And her husband's name is Nathan Rice. So they became the Roberts area's, one of the Roberts area's largest home land owners. So they considered, they were very close-knit families. So they considered Nathan Rice as an outsider because he didn't grow up with them and come with them. So here is my fourth cousin, Fairy Mae Bryant, and her name was changed to Mae Walker. She was adopted by Alelia Walker, daughter of Madam C.J. Walker. If you see her hair, Madam C.J. Walker used her as a model when she was a very young girl in order to sell her hair products. And because her daughter did not have any children, she adopted her. This is some of the descendants of the Roberts. If you notice, when I was telling you about the children who were indentured very early, they were born, Isham was born in 1776. His sister was a year older than him, but this particular Martha Locust was born in 1854. And also one of the Roberts moved out to Spokane, and he was in Indiana, and he dressed and also put on different programs. Here is a picture of myself, my granddaughter, who's one of the children of the American Revolution, and a cousin that I met who's also descendant from the Locust family, and his family spells his L-O-C-U-S without the T. And here is the Roberts settlement in 1870 out in Indiana. As I told you, many of these names that you see in my family, these core names of Native American community in Granville, North Carolina. So Ishmael Roberts' wife was Mary Bass. So I have the Bass. I descend from the Goins line. They were one of the 1619. I found Hawleys in my records. The Locklear are Lumbee Indian. My, you see the locust there. One of Ishmael's daughters married a Mitchell. The gentleman I was telling you about, the man and lady who were beat and their children kidnapped, her name was Rachel Pettiford before she married, before she married Valentine Lucas. Richardson were also free people of color, and they're supposed to be Halawasaponi. And my husband is a Richardson, and he can trace his line to Benjamin Richardson, who was also a Revolutionary War hero. So what happened is, as the people were pushed together in North Carolina, North Carolina's free first people, the Lumbee are there, the Halawasaponi, which I say the Richardsons descend from. And so you see a lot of different tribes that came together under the Lumbee title. And these are just some of the actual references I used in working on this the program and in the book. So you'll see Indians of North America, the Lumbee, the Free Negro in North Carolina. Tim Hashaw wrote one about the children of perdition and mixed race from Mixed America. Paul Hynek, who did a lot of work on free African Americans in North Carolina, Virginia, and South Carolina. And this book right here, Edmund Morgan, American Slavery, American Freedom, he actually mentions in that my 9th great grandfather, European, born in England in 1602. He only served about 5 years indentureship, went back, married my 9th great grandmother, and then they came back here in 1635. So this is the end of my presentation. On the back here, you can see that the books, this one is complete, but the other one, Walking in His Footsteps from Angola to Jamestown, and that one I'm taking the family back further and including my ancestors from 1619. So,
all right.
thank you very much.
Thanks, Gigi. We do have a question from somebody, and it looks like they answered it themselves, but I'm going to read it anyway, just in case you have anything to add. So he says, the Cherokee people have been mentioned a couple of times, and I've heard that quite a few of them had African ancestry after colonization, of course. So what is the relationship between Melungeon and Cherokee peoples? To what extent are their histories entwined? Are there individuals who consider themselves both Melungeon and Cherokee? Are there other Native American groups that have interacted with Melungeons? And then he says, okay, Lumbee Indians also have a close connection to Melungeons. And so if you have anything to add to that, that would be awesome.
Well, what happens a lot is people, and if you know about Native American groups, because they were being pushed and forced the Catawba, which is also one of those groups that we descend from, there was only 35 of them left in the early 1800s. So they ended up marrying into these other tribes. But when I do my DNA, I do have Native DNA. It doesn't say it's Cherokee. It doesn't say it's Catawba, but I know my family. But
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. Do you want to stop sharing your screen and we can be
Sure.
more faceful?
Okay, let me stop share. Okay.
Yeah, that's great. I don't have any other questions at this time, but I remember you talking about the Big Meat family. What an unusual name. And I read about that in your book, and that family sounded just incredible. They owned a store, is that right? And then
They were famous potters, the Big Meat
potters.
family.
Okay,
But my
yeah.
grandmother, whose nickname was Big Meat, her and my grandfather had their own store.
That's the one. That's the part I remember.
Yes.
Yeah, that was really
The Big
interesting.
Meat family were very famous potters
Wow.
in
Well,
North Carolina. Yeah.
that's cool. I would like to know more about your research. Where did you get all the information from? Did you have to go into the archives?
Oh, definitely. When you see that record that shows my ninth great grandmother, I actually got that from going to the archives in DC and Thomas's records, his military records. I
Wow.
got that in DC, and his records were this thick. So I had to decide, I don't live in DC, so I had to decide which records were pertinent to proving his ancestry. And the wonderful thing about that is when I was doing that, I was able, in those, he has to say, or any military man who's trying to get a pension, is that your first wife? Is that, and so on his death certificate, my grandmother didn't have his name. He was raised by his great aunt or his aunt who's on the cover. And the family had said that that was her sister's child, that Daniel, my great grandfather, was. And so my grandmother didn't have her grandmother's name. So when I read his documents at the National Archives, he says, I married first. They called her Nerva. Her name was Minerva Dawson. He married her in 1870. They had 3 children, and she died the day after Daniel was born. So she died in childbirth. So if you just think about this young woman who married at 15, had 3 children, and she was deceased by 1874.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. There's so much in there that just is heart-wrenching. It just, I don't know. We need to hear these things. Absolutely. If you don't know your history, you're doomed to repeat it, which I can't
That's right.
imagine, but let's not go there, shall we? Yeah. So anyway, oh wait, let me see. There's another question. With so many records online these days, how do you decide to look further? And if so, where to look?
Well, one thing about the records online, a lot of times everything is not online. And so I'm a member of Ancestry and I pay my dues religiously. But when you see this commercial and it says, just hit this green, shaken leaf, and it's going to take you all the way back, that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So what you have to realize when you're doing this research is that different let's say like, if your ancestor, you don't see their death certificate or their birth certificate. And typically you're not going to see the birth certificate before 1920.
Mm.
And so like my great grandmother, Daniel's wife, I thought her death certificate was going to be in Camden, New Jersey, because that's where she died. But it wasn't. It was in the, what is considered the capital, Trenton, New Jersey. And a lot of times on some of them, if you're looking for a death certificate, Georgia's one of the hardest places because it's $20 for each certificate. But North Carolina, most of theirs are online at Ancestry. But there are, you need to go to courthouses, you need to go to family members, Bibles. There's so many different sources that you can access, and I'm finding different ones every day.
It's just a treasure hunt.
It is.
Yeah. Yeah, like a real mystery. You actually have to go places and do things. You can't just do it all online.
No, a lot of people think they can just sit at their computer and do it. No, you can't. You can't.
Yeah, yeah, that's just fascinating. All right, well, no more questions at the moment, so I think we're going to wrap this up, and I just wanted to
Okay.
thank you so much for taking the time to do this. We so appreciate having your story told here. It's worthwhile. Thank you for all the research you did to do this and to bring the story out into the light. Really just wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. I thank you for inviting me.